Chapter 1. Cracks in Glass. The clatter of silverware against porcelain was the only sound filling the dining room. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, the kind of quiet that used to feel like peace, but lately felt like distance. I sat at the head of the table, shoulders still sore from a long shift at the construction site, boots lined with dust waiting by the door. Across from me, Emily scrolled through her phone, her fork barely lifting a piece of roasted chicken before setting it back down. Her lips curled into a faint smile at whatever flashed across her screen. Not the kind of smile I used to get, the one that warmed me after 12-hour days, the one that reminded me why I worked so hard. No, this was smaller, secretive. She angled the phone slightly away, as if I wasn't supposed to notice. I cleared my throat. Food's getting cold. She blinked up, startled, almost like she'd forgotten I was even there. Oh yeah, sorry. I'm just catching up on a few messages. Messages? That word felt heavier than it should have. You've been on that thing since I got home. It's been a long day, she said, shrugging, eyes already drifting back down. So I had mine, but I didn't say it. I never said it. That was my role, keep my head down, provide, don't complain. She deserved comfort after what she called her stressful office job. That's what I told myself every time I dragged my aching body home, covered in sweat, only to hear about how her boss had made her redo a spreadsheet or how the printer jammed. You didn't touch the salad, I said instead, trying to pull her attention back. Emily sighed, putting her phone face down on the table with an exaggerated motion. Why are you monitoring what I eat now? Seriously, can't we just have dinner without you picking at everything? The bite landed sharper than I expected. I leaned back, chewing slowly, and studied her. Once, she used to hang on my words at this very table. She'd ask me about the job site, about the guys, about whether the house plans were running smoothly. She'd smile at my stupid stories, laugh at the kind of jokes that only worked in the blue-collar world. Now, she was miles away, even though she sat right across from me. I'm not monitoring, I said carefully. I just cooked for us, that's all. Thought you might want to eat. Her eyes softened for a second, like she realized she'd snapped too hard. But then the wall came back up, the same one I've been feeling for weeks now. I'm eating, she muttered, stabbing a piece of lettuce. I watched her fork lift, but she didn't take the bite. Instead, her gaze flickered back to that phone, like it was tugging her, whispering her name. I set my fork down. Who keeps you so busy on there? Emily froze for half a second, then gave a short laugh. Oh my God, really? You sound jealous. It's just work stuff, okay? My boss is breathing down my neck about a report, and some of the girls were venting in the group chat. It's not a conspiracy. The word jealous stung more than it should have. Didn't say it was. Sure sounded like it. She smirked, not playful, not the way she used to tease me. It was sharper, almost condescending. Don't tell me you're one of those guys who freaks out every time his wife looks at her phone. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to react. No, I just miss when dinner felt like dinner. Us talking, you know? Not you and a screen. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Her eyes flicked toward me, then back to her plate. She pushed the lettuce around without eating. When we first bought this house, dinners used to be the highlight of our nights. We'd sit with cheap wine and laugh about the future, kids, vacations, how someday she'd leave her 9-to-5 grind because I was working toward a promotion that could give us more. Back then, it felt like us against the world. But lately, it felt like I was the only one fighting. Look, she said finally leaning back. I'm just tired, okay? I don't need an interrogation. You've been working all day, I've been working all day. Can't we just eat? Yeah, I murmured, but the words didn't feel like agreement. I forced a few bites down, but the taste was ash in my mouth. She barely touched hers. Later, while she rinsed her plate half-heartedly at the sink, I leaned against the counter, watching the way her shoulders stiffened under my gaze. Something on your mind? I asked. She didn't turn around. I told you, I'm just tired. You've been saying that a lot lately. Finally, she set the plate down, spun around, and crossed her arms. What's your point? I don't know. I rubbed the back of my neck. Feels like you're somewhere else. Even when you're here. Her eyes narrowed. So now you're a mind reader? I exhaled slowly. Forget it. No. Say it, she pressed, tilting her head. That same sharp edge in her tone again. If you think I'm doing something wrong, spit it out. I met her gaze, steady. I think you don't look at me the way you used to. That caught her. For just a second, the mask cracked. Then she laughed, short and dismissive. You're being dramatic. Maybe. Or maybe I notice when my wife barely talks to me anymore. Her smirk faltered. She turned back to the sink, water running over her hands as though she could rinse the conversation away. I stayed silent because I knew if I pushed harder, she'd just retreat further. But the ache in my chest was heavy. That night, in bed, the distance was a canyon. She lay facing the wall, her phone glowing faintly in her hand. I stared at the ceiling, the hum of the ceiling fan loud in the stillness. Whoever you're talking to must be hilarious, I said quietly. She sighed loudly, tossing the phone onto the nightstand. Are we really doing this again? God, you're acting so insecure. Insecure? Yes. It's exhausting. You work all day, come home, and the first thing you do is pick a fight because I was on my phone. You sound like some bitter old man. Her words cut deeper than she realized, or maybe exactly as deep as she wanted them to. I don't want to fight, I said, voice low. I just want my wife back. The silence stretched. She didn't answer. She didn't turn. And as I lay there staring at the dark, a thought crept in, one I didn't want to admit even to myself. Maybe I'd already lost her. That was how the cracks began. Not with screaming or slammed doors. Not with obvious betrayals. Just with little silences, secret smiles at glowing screens, and words sharper than they needed to be. At dinner, at the sink, in bed, the glass was still standing. But I could hear it. The faint sound of something splintering, ready to break. Chapter 2, The Boss. The smell of cologne and wine hung heavy in the air, mixed with the faint beat of some pop playlist echoing from hidden speakers. The hotel banquet hall was dressed to impress. Round tables covered in white cloths, silver chafing dishes steaming with catered food, a soft glow of golden lights dangling above. Everyone looked polished, men in tailored suits, women in cocktail dresses. I fell out of place the second I walked in. My calloused hands didn't belong holding a glass of champagne. My button-down shirt was the nicest I owned, bought for weddings and funerals, and it still felt stiff on my shoulders. Emily, though, she fit right in. She wore a deep green dress that clung in all the places that made men's eyes follow her. She knew it too. She carried herself differently when she was around her co-workers, chin tilted higher, smile sharper, like she was someone else entirely. This way, she said, fingers curling around my wrist as if dragging me. Everyone's dying to meet you. I doubted that, but I let her pull me anyway. That was my role, support her, be the husband she could show off when she wanted. We stopped at a cluster of people laughing near the bar. Emily's smile widened as her eyes landed on someone. There he is, she said. That was when I first saw Richard. He was taller than me, broad-shouldered, but not the kind that came from hard labor. His was the sculpted kind, the result of a gym membership, a personal trainer, and protein shakes that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. His black suit looked like it had been sewn directly onto him. No wrinkle, no flaw. His blonde hair was styled in that careless way that probably took a stylist half an hour to perfect. And then there was the smirk. The kind of smirk that said he knew exactly who he was and what he could get away with. Richard, Emily said brightly, brushing her hair back. This is my husband, Michael. He turned, scanning me with eyes that didn't even try to hide their judgment. Then that smirk widened. So this is the lucky man who got her to say I do. He extended his hand. His grip was firm, but not warm. More of a test than a greeting. Nice to finally meet you, I said evenly. Likewise. He looked back at Emily as though I were already dismissed. You didn't exaggerate. He's got that solid thing going for him. Strong hands, huh? Emily laughed a little too quickly. Yeah, he does. I narrowed my eyes, but she was already brushing past the moment, tugging me closer to their group. The conversations blurred, stock market, real estate, vacation homes, the kind of things I didn't have much to add to. Richard, though, commanded every circle he walked into. He was loud enough to pull attention, funny enough to hold it, and cocky enough to make sure everyone knew he was the center. I stayed quiet, watching. Every so often, Richard would drop his hand casually on Emily's shoulder, leaning in just a little too close to whisper something in her ear. She'd laugh, high, bright, and real. A laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. At one point, as she leaned to grab a drink, his fingers grazed the small of her back. My stomach tightened. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was instinct, the way some people touched when they were comfortable. But it didn't feel like nothing. I sipped my drink, trying to keep my face neutral. Don't make a scene. Don't look paranoid. Don't give him the satisfaction. Emily turned to me, wine glass in hand. Richard was just telling me about his trip to Monaco. Can you believe he gambled in a casino James Bond once filmed in? Richard chuckled. Lost a small fortune too, but the women made it worth it. His eyes flicked to Emily as he said it. The group laughed. I didn't. Sounds expensive, I said flatly. Oh, it's all relative, Richard replied, swirling his drink. You work hard, you earn, you spend. No point in saving for the grave. I bit back the retort on my tongue that he wouldn't last one day doing the kind of work I did. That his money came from charm and connections, not blood and sweat. Instead, I nodded once. Different philosophies, I guess. He raised his glass at me mockingly. To each his own. Emily's eyes darted between us, a small crease in her forehead, as if silently pleading with me not to challenge him. Later, when the crowd shifted toward the buffet, I finally had a moment alone with her. She was at the salad table, carefully scooping some onto her plate. You didn't tell me he was, I started, searching for the word. What? She asked, arching an eyebrow. Like that. Her lips curled. He's confident. That's just how he is. Confident, I muttered. He's arrogant. He looks at you like what? She pressed, her eyes narrowing. Like he owns you, I said quietly. Emily rolled her eyes, letting out a sharp laugh. God, you sound ridiculous. He's my boss, Michael. You're reading into nothing. Nothing doesn't look like his hand on your back. She stiffened, then leaned closer, her voice low. Don't start. Please. Not here. Not tonight. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to swallow the words. But the fire in my chest only grew. When dessert rolled around, Richard took the seat directly beside Emily. His chair scraped close enough that their elbows touched when they leaned forward. So, Michael, he said suddenly, turning his smirk toward me. Emily tells me you're in construction. That must be backbreaking work. It's honest work, I replied. Oh, no doubt. We all have our roles, right? His tone dripped with patronizing charm. Some of us build, some of us manage, some of us lead. Emily laughed lightly, covering her mouth with her hand. I set my fork down, staring at him. And some of us know respect. The smirk twitched. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something else, irritation, maybe. Then it was gone. He raised his glass. Fair enough. The rest of the night dragged. I watched every gesture, every private smile between them, every inside joke I wasn't part of. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe it was just the way they were. But my gut twisted with something deeper than jealousy. It was instinct. The kind a man gets when he knows a line's been crossed, even if no one else sees it. When we finally left, Emily hooked her arm through mine. Well, that wasn't so bad, was it? I forced a smile. Sure. But inside, the doubt burned hotter than ever. That was the night I met Richard. The night I saw the way his eyes lingered too long, the way her laughter came too easily. The night my instincts whispered what I didn't want to believe. Chapter 3, Red Flags. The first time Emily said she'd be working late, I didn't think much of it. End of the quarter, big presentations, numbers to hit, that's what she told me. And I knew her company wasn't shy about wringing every drop of time from its employees. But it didn't stop at one night. It became 2, then 3, then whole weeks where I'd come home to a dark kitchen, leftovers untouched, her chair at the table empty. I'd sit down with my plate and fork, listening to the clock tick louder than it ever used to, wondering what was more important than coming home. One Thursday night, I was folding laundry in the bedroom when I noticed it. Her blouse, the silk one I bought her last Christmas, wasn't just carrying the faint scent of her perfume. It was sharper, sweeter, not hers. It clung like it didn't belong. I lifted the fabric to my nose again, frowning. Emily wore citrus notes, light and clean. This was floral, heavier, almost dizzying. When she finally walked in after 10, heels clicking against the hardwood. I asked, "Late again?" She dropped her purse onto the couch and kicked off her shoes, her tone clipped. "Deadlines don't care about the clock, Michael. You know that." "Sure." I held up the blouse in my hands. "But do deadlines wear perfume?" Her eyes flickered to the fabric, then back to me. Just for a moment. Then she snorted. "Really? You're sniffing my clothes now? God, you sound paranoid. I just noticed it smelled different. It's called sitting in a damn office with a dozen people. Someone probably sprayed half a bottle before walking past me." Jesus. I lowered the blouse slowly, her words sharp in the air between us. I wanted to believe her, but the unease sat like a stone in my gut. The next week, it wasn't perfume. It was her phone. She used to leave it charging on the counter, face up, screen lighting with every harmless notification. Now she kept it close, always flipped face down. At dinner, she'd set it beside her plate like another guest at the table. When it buzzed, she'd slide it into her lap, fingers tapping furiously under the tablecloth. One night, I caught a glimpse as she angled away, just a line before the screen dimmed. "Can't wait until what?" I asked her. "Who keeps texting so late?" She didn't look up from her plate. "Coworkers. Coworkers usually sleep at night." Her fork clattered against porcelain as she looked up, eyes blazing. "You don't know what it's like, Michael. You don't know the pressure I'm under. These projects don't run on your construction schedule." I leaned back, stunned at the venom in her tone. "I wasn't attacking you. I was just asking." "Well, stop asking," she snapped, pushing her chair back. "I can't breathe without you twisting it into some conspiracy." The kitchen went silent after she stormed off. I sat there, staring at the half-empty wine glass she'd left behind, wondering how a simple question had turned into a battlefield. The more I noticed, the more I couldn't ignore. She started coming home later, sometimes after midnight, heels dangling from her fingers, hair undone, eyes too bright. Her excuses blurred into a pattern. Meeting ran over, client crisis, presentation prep. But I knew the way she used to come home tired. This wasn't tired. This was flushed, restless, wired. One Saturday morning, as she showered, her phone lit up on the nightstand. Just a name. I stared at it, pulse hammering in my ears. My hand hovered inches above the screen. I could open it. Just one swipe. But I didn't. Because if I found what I feared, there'd be no coming back. It was in the little moments, too. The way she flinched when I touched her shoulder in the kitchen. The way her laugh sounded lighter when it came from behind a closed bathroom door. Phone pressed her ear. One evening, I walked into the living room and found her sitting cross-legged on the couch. Phone tilted just enough to hide the screen. She jumped when she saw me. "Who's that?" I asked. She locked the phone with a sharp tap. "Nobody." Didn't look like nobody. "Christ, Michael." She stood up, hands flying. "Do you hear yourself? You're obsessed. You're acting like some jealous high school boyfriend." I clenched my jaw, trying to steady my voice. "Because I care about you." "No." She jabbed a finger at me. "Because you don't trust me." The word stung worse than a slap. Because once upon a time, trust was the easiest thing in the world between us. I believed every word, every promise. I'd built this life brick by brick on the foundation of it. Now that foundation felt like sand. It wasn't all fights. Sometimes she tried to smooth things over. She'd cook dinner, pour me a drink, ask about my day with a smile that looked practiced. But even then, the warmth wasn't there. She was somewhere else, her eyes drifting, her phone buzzing faintly in the other room. One night, as we sat on the porch, I asked quietly, "Do you even want to be here anymore?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." Emily sighed, staring into her wine glass. "You're exhausting lately, you know that?" "Exhausting?" "Yeah, always questioning me, watching me, looking for problems that aren't there. It's suffocating." I swallowed hard, staring at the night sky above. "Maybe I wouldn't have to ask if it didn't feel like you were slipping away." She didn't answer. She just sipped her wine, eyes on anything but me. The red flags weren't just in her actions, they were in her words. Little jabs, sharper than they used to be. "You wouldn't understand, Michael. It's not like your job is complicated. Do you ever read? Or is sports talk radio all you listen to? No wonder I have to stay late. At least at work people push me to be better." Each one landed like a crack in glass. hairline fractures spreading further each day. And when I pushed back, even gently, the word always came out her mouth like a weapon. Jealous. If I asked why she didn't answer my calls, I was jealous. If I asked who texted her past midnight, I was jealous. If I asked why she smelled like perfume that wasn't hers, I was jealous. The more I tried to explain, the less she listened. The woman who once looked at me with love now looked at me like an anchor holding her down. But late at night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling while she typed in the glow of her phone, I knew it wasn't just jealousy. It was instinct, and instincts don't lie. Chapter 4: The Dinner Party Betrayal. The restaurant glowed with polished chandeliers and laughter spilling across the long banquet tables. Glasses clinked, servers weaved between guests in black and white uniforms, and the scent of roasted duck and garlic butter drifted through the air. It was the company's annual dinner, the one Emily had been reminding me about for weeks. She walked beside me in a deep red dress, her hand loosely hooked through my arm. She looked radiant, I couldn't deny that. Heads turned as we entered, but it wasn't me they lingered on. It was her. Always her. I try to take pride in that. She was my wife, after all. But a knot in my stomach tightened the moment I spotted Richard across the room, already holding court with a cluster of younger employees, his laugh booming, his suit immaculate. Emily's grip on my arm tightened just slightly when she saw him. Her eyes lit up in a way they hadn't in months. "There he is," she whispered. Of course. We made our way over, and Richard turned, smirk locked in place like it belonged to him alone. "Emily," he said warmly, leaning in to kiss the air beside her cheek. His hand lingered at her waist longer than necessary. "And the husband? Michael, right?" "That's right," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was deliberately firm, a test again, but this time with an audience. Richard leaned back, glass of wine in hand. "You clean up well. Emily's been bragging about you." "Has she?" I glanced at her. She was already blushing. "Oh yes," he continued smoothly, eyes never leaving her. "Told me you were the strong, dependable type. Every man should hope to be described like that, huh?" The group laughed. I forced a smile, though my jaw was tight. As the night carried on, the wine flowed, and Richard made sure he was beside Emily at every turn. During hors d'oeuvres, his hand brushed her lower back as he leaned close to tell a joke. During dinner, his chair crept nearer until their arms grazed each time they lifted their forks. He whispered in her ear, and she threw her head back, laughing like she hadn't laughed with me in years. I kept my hands locked around my glass, knuckles whitening, silently chanting, "Don't cause a scene. Not here. Not now." But every laugh, every playful shove of her hand against his shoulder chipped away at me. At one point, Richard poured wine into Emily's glass, filling it before I could move. "Careful," I said, voice low. "She's had enough." Emily shot me a glare. "I can handle myself." Richard smirked. "Of course she can. A woman like her knows her limits." He winked at her. My fork clattered against my plate. No one seemed to notice. The main course arrived, but I barely tasted it. I watched the two of them share private smiles, inside jokes I wasn't privy to. I heard Richard lean close, his voice dropping. "You're wasted behind a desk, Emily. You should be leading, not filing reports for me." She giggled, cheeks flushed from wine. "Well, maybe if I play my cards right." The words hit like a slap. I turned to her, disbelief lacing my voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" She blinked at me innocently, then brushed it off. "Relax. We're joking. Joking. Always joking." When dessert was served, the fatal moment arrived. Richard leaned back in his chair, one arm stretched across the back of Emily's seat, as if he'd already claimed it. "So tell me, Emily," he drawled, "how did Michael ever convince you to settle down? Surely he wasn't your only option." I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. Emily swirled her wine glass, smirking. Then she looked at Richard, her eyes gleaming. "If I'd met you before my husband," she said sweetly, "I never would have married him." The table erupted in laughter. "Except me." Richard's grin widened as he leaned closer to her. "I don't think he'd bother us anyway." Something in me snapped. The chair screeched back as I rose. Richard barely had time to turn before my fist connected square with his jaw. The crack echoed above the laughter, silencing the table in an instant. His wine glass shattered against the floor as he stumbled back, clutching his face. Gasps rippled across the room. Emily shot up, her chair toppling. "Michael," she shrieked. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Richard spat blood into a napkin, smirking even through the pain. "Guess I hit a nerve." I glared down at him, chest heaving, the room spinning with rage. Emily shoved me hard in the chest. "If you're unhappy, the door's right there, you jealous, entitled loser." The words cut deeper than any punch. The room was watching, waiting for my reaction, but I said nothing. I turned, walked past the shattered glass, past the stairs and whispers, and left in silence. Chapter 5, Silent Storm. The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped out of the restaurant, the muffled voices and clinking glasses fading behind me. My fists were still trembling, knuckles raw from Richard's jaw, but it wasn't the pain that consumed me, it was her words. Jealous, entitled loser. They echoed in my head, each syllable heavier than the last. My wife, my partner, the woman I gave everything to had screamed those words at me in front of her coworkers, in front of him. I shoved open the driver's door and dropped into the seat, gripping the wheel so tightly the leather creaked. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. The silence of the car was deafening. I drove aimlessly at first, not even sure where I was headed. My chest heaved with a storm I couldn't release. I replayed the scene over and over. Her smile at Richard's jokes, the way her eyes sparkled at his compliments, the venom in her voice when she looked at me like I was the enemy. If I'd met you before my husband, I never would have married him. The betrayal wasn't in what she said, it was in how she said it. She meant it. She wanted him to hear it, to feel special, while I sat there humiliated. My knuckles tapped against the steering wheel, harder each time. After everything, I muttered to myself. After everything I've done. Memories came in flashes. The nights I stayed up past midnight working overtime, my back screaming, just so she could have that designer bag she swore she needed for work. The weekends I sacrificed with friends so I could repaint the living room the way she wanted, because the beige felt lifeless. The trips I never took, the hobbies I gave up, the dreams I shelved, all so she could feel like she was building the life she wanted. And for what? So she could sit there, glowing under another man's gaze, and tell him she wished he'd come first. The city lights blurred as I sped down the highway, anger mixing with heartbreak in a cocktail I couldn't swallow. My throat tightened, eyes burning, but I refused to let tears fall. Not for her. Not for someone who could cut me down like that. I gritted my teeth, forcing my eyes forward. She doesn't get that. I said aloud, voice breaking in the empty car. She doesn't get to take that from me. But then came another memory. Not of tonight. Not of Richard. Of her, years ago. We were 23, sitting on the hood of my beat-up Chevy under a blanket of stars. She wore ripped jeans and one of my old sweatshirts, her hair messy, her laugh spilling into the night like music. She leaned against me, hand tangled in mine. "You're it for me, Michael," she whispered. "I don't care about money. I don't care about anything else. As long as it's you." Her eyes back then were so pure, so certain. And I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. Now, that same woman had looked at me across a crowded table and told another man she'd never have married me if he'd come first. The contrast was unbearable. The loyalty I once trusted with my life had rotted into cruelty, into betrayal. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel, the horn blaring into the night. The sound startled me, but the rage didn't fade. Eventually, I pulled off the highway, heart still pounding, and found myself parked outside a dingy bar I'd driven past 100 times but never entered. The neon sign flickered, buzzing faintly. I sat there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the window. I looked older than I felt, lines carved deeper into my face, eyes hollow. When did I become this man? I climbed out, walked inside. The place smelled like beer and fried food, the floor sticky under my boots. A jukebox crooned some old country tune in the corner, half drowned out by murmured conversations. I sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey neat, and downed it before the bartender even turned away. The burn seared my throat, but it didn't numb the ache. By the third glass, my head buzzed, but my thoughts only got louder. I saw her face in every swirl of amber liquid. I heard her laughter in the echo of clinking glasses. I imagined Richard's smug smirk, the way he wiped blood from his lip like I was just another obstacle to toy with. I want to hit him again. I wanted to drag her out of that place and demand answers, demand respect, demand something that resembled the marriage we'd promised each other. Instead, I sat there in silence, gripping the glass until it threatened to shatter. Around midnight, I left the bar and wandered the streets, the cool night air sobering me faster than I wanted. I walked block after block, past shuttered storefronts and glowing traffic lights, past strangers laughing in groups that reminded me of what I didn't have anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. One message. From Emily. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Dozens of words came to mind. Accusations, confessions of hurt, raw fury, but none of them felt like enough. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my pocket and kept walking. By 2 in the morning, exhaustion dragged at my legs. I found a cheap hotel on the edge of downtown, its sign blinking weakly in the dark. The lobby smelled like bleach. The clerk barely looked up as I slid cash across the counter. The room was small, the sheets thin, but it didn't matter. I dropped onto the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, her voice still ringing in my ears. "If you're unhappy, the door's right there, you jealous, entitled loser." I squeezed my eyes shut, but the words carved deeper. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't want to go home. I turned onto my side, pulled the thin blanket over me, and let the storm inside me rage in silence. Chapter 6, The Morning After. The blinds in our living room filtered the morning sun into slanted bars of light across the hardwood floor. The clock on the wall read a little past 9. I hadn't slept, just watched the dawn crawl in through the hotel window before driving home to do what had to be done. The house was quiet when I walked through the door. Too quiet. The kind of silence that felt hollow, like it belonged to a place already abandoned. I moved through each room with purpose. Suitcases lined the hallway, packed neatly with shirts, work boots, and a handful of keepsakes that still meant something to me. A stack of envelopes with my name already signed on withdrawal slips sat on the kitchen counter, alongside the paperwork from the bank. The joint account wasn't joint anymore, and right in the center of the counter, glinting under the morning light, was my wedding ring. Beside it lay a folded note in my handwriting. No speeches, no long explanations. Just a single sentence. "You made your choice, and now I've made mine." I set my keys on top of it all and took a step back, staring at the finality of it. The storm inside me had gone quiet. It wasn't long before I heard the rattle of a key at the front door. Emily stumbled inside, sunglasses shielding her eyes, hair a tangled mess from a night that had clearly gone too long. The smell of alcohol clung to her clothes, sharp even from across the room. She kicked off her heels carelessly, sighing as if the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. "Well," she muttered, voice hoarse, "that was a night." Her smug smile lingered for only a second before she looked up and froze. Her eyes darted from the suitcases to the counter, then to me, standing in the middle of the room with my arms crossed. The color drained from her face. "Michael." Her voice cracked around my name. "What's all this?" I didn't answer. I let her take it all in, the bags, the paperwork, the ring gleaming like a period at the end of a long sentence. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing bloodshot eyes that blinked rapidly as though that would change the picture in front of her. No, you didn't, Michael. Don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" I said, my voice low, steady. "You think this is dramatic?" She laughed nervously, running a hand through her hair. "Come on, you overreacted last night. You embarrassed yourself, but it's not the end of the world. Richard will get over it. I'll smooth things over at work. Richard." I snapped, the name like poison in my mouth. She flinched. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on hers. "That's where your head goes first?" "Not me. Not us. Him." Her lips parted, searching for words. "You're twisting this. You've always been so insecure, Michael." I was joking. That's all it was. God, can't you take a joke without turning it into some jealous meltdown? I laughed, sharp, humorless. "A joke?" You looked him in the eye, and said if you'd met him first, you never would have married me. You call that a joke?" Her voice rose, defensive. Everyone was laughing. "Do you think I meant it? You're so damn sensitive sometimes. Always looking for reasons to feel like the victim." "The victim?" I shook my head slowly. "You humiliated me. You sided with him in front of everyone. And when I stood up for myself, you called me a loser." The word hung in the air like a blade. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing she had no defense for that. The silence stretched, broken only by her shallow breathing. Then her expression shifted, the smugness cracking under the weight of reality. Her eyes darted to the ring, the note, the bags once more. Panic seeped in. "Michael, wait," she said, softer now. "You don't mean this. You're angry, I get it, but you don't just walk away from everything we've built." "Everything we've built?" I repeated, bitter. "I built this, Emily. I worked myself to the bone so you could have the house you wanted, the clothes, the life. And while I was breaking myself to give you everything, you were giving your smiles and your respect to another man." Her face tightened, a sheen of sweat breaking on her forehead. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that." Her voice cracked. Michael, I made a mistake. I drank too much. I said things I shouldn't have. But you can't just throw us away over one night." "One night?" I snapped. "This wasn't one night. This has been months. The late hours, the perfume that wasn't yours, the texts you hide, the way you look at me like I'm a burden. Last night was just the proof I couldn't ignore anymore." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Her hands hovered in the air, desperate, trembling. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Don't do this. Don't leave me. I'll fix it. I'll make it right. Just don't go." For a brief second, the sight of her, disheveled, broken, clinging to the scraps of what she destroyed, pulled at something deep inside me. The memory of that girl in the hood of my Chevy, whispering promises under the stars. But then I remembered her voice, sharp and cold across that dinner table. "If you're unhappy, the door's right there. You jealous, entitled loser." The echo of it hardened my resolve. "You made your choice," I said quietly. Her tears dried in an instant, replaced by something darker. Her eyes narrowed, jaw tightening. "Fine," she spat, venom dripping from her tone. "Go. Run away like you always do. You think you're better than me? You're nothing without me. Nothing." Her words landed heavy, but they no longer cut. Not anymore. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The kitchen felt colder than it ever had before. Morning sunlight slanted across the counter where my ring and note still sat, gleaming like evidence at a crime scene. Emily stood between me and the doorway, her arms folded tight as if she could block my escape. Her mascara was smudged from last night's hangover tears, her hair a tangled halo of regret and defiance. I could see the battle raging inside her, part pride, part desperation, but her mouth was already moving faster than her better judgment. "You're really going to walk out on me?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "After everything we've been through, you just pack your bags and leave?" I leaned against the counter, silent. "Let her talk." She stepped closer, jabbing a finger toward me. "You overreacted. You embarrassed me in front of everyone, and now you're acting like I'm a villain? Do you even realize how controlling you sound?" I tilted my head, watching her unravel. "Don't give me that look," she snapped. "You've been paranoid for months, checking up on me, questioning every late night. God, Michael, you suffocate me. Maybe if you trusted me, none of this would have happened." There was the first crack. None of this would have happened. I let the words hang, not giving her an inch. My silence only made her more frantic. She exhaled shakily, arms dropping to her sides. Her voice softened, pleading now. "It's not what you think. Okay, Richard and I, it's not serious. It just happened. A couple of times. That's all." The world seemed to tilt, but I held myself still. Her eyes searched mine, waiting for me to explode, to yell, to break. But I didn't. Instead, I said quietly a couple of times. Her face twisted. "What? You want the number? You want details? Fine, yes, I slept with him. Happy now? You finally got your confirmation, detective?" She laughed bitterly, the sound sharp enough to cut. "Congratulations. You were right. I cheated. But maybe if you hadn't been so obsessed with work, maybe if you hadn't come home exhausted every damn night, maybe if you'd actually made me feel like a woman instead of just some obligation. Stop. My voice sliced through hers, low but commanding. Her mouth snapped shut. I took a slow step forward. You don't get to rewrite this story. You don't get to blame me for your choices. She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. I worked overtime so you could have a life you wanted. I came home exhausted because I was breaking my back to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I gave up my hobbies, my time, my dreams, so you could have yours. And you call that neglect? Emily's eyes glistened, but she bit her lip and pushed back harder. I needed more than money, Michael. I needed attention, affection, excitement. You were always tired, always distant. I laughed coldly. Excitement. That's what he gave you? Flirting in the office, sneaking around behind my back, telling him you wished you'd never married me. That's excitement to you. She flinched, but I kept going, the words icy and relentless. You think I didn't notice? The perfume that wasn't yours on your clothes. The late nights, the texts you hid like they were state secrets. You treated me like I was crazy for asking questions, made me feel small for noticing. And all the while, you were proving me right. Her tears finally spilled, streaking down her cheeks. She shook her head, voice breaking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I didn't. It just happened. I barked a bitter laugh. No, Emily. Affairs don't just happen. You made a choice. Again and again. Every time you answered his texts. Every time you stayed late. Every time you came home and looked me in the eye, knowing what you'd done. She crumpled into a chair, sobbing into her hands. The sound echoed through the house, hollow and raw. For a long moment, I stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, the one I'd once sworn to protect, to cherish, to trust. She was unrecognizable now, broken, exposed, the mask ripped away. Michael, she choked out between sobs. Please don't leave me. I'll stop. I'll cut it off. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't go. Her words fell like ashes. I crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. My voice was calm, cold, steady. You already did what you wanted. You already chose him over me. And now I'm choosing me. Her face contorted with anguish, then rage, then something desperate in between. She reached for my arm, fingers clutching like claws. Don't you dare walk out of here and leave me like this. You're nothing without me, Michael. Nothing. I pulled free, her grip sliding away like water. You destroyed us, I said flatly. Not me. You. Her sobs shook the walls, but I didn't waver. I turned, walked toward the doorway, and left her in the wreckage she created. Chapter 8. The Aftermath. The next week moved like a blur, yet every step I took was deliberate. For the first time in years, my decisions weren't about what Emily wanted or what she might think or how to keep the peace. They were about me, about reclaiming what little dignity she hadn't managed to grind into dust. The morning after our confrontation, I called a lawyer. His office smelled like leather and coffee, and he shook my hand firmly as I explained, in clipped sentences, what had happened. He listened, scribbled notes, and when I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You've got grounds, he said. Clear grounds. The texts, the witnesses at that dinner, her own admission, it's enough. We'll move quickly. Good, I said, my voice steady. I want it clean, and I want her cut off from the money. Every account she has access to, I want it frozen. He nodded. We can do that. Do you want spousal support on the table? I gave a humorless laugh. The only thing I want from her is distance. By the time I left his office, the wheels were in motion. The joint account had been drained of my share, my name taken off her credit cards, her access revoked. I thought about her face when she realized she couldn't swipe her way through another brunch with her girlfriends. And speaking of them, word traveled fast. I hadn't planned on it, but a mutual friend cornered me at the gas station 2 days later. Mark. He was married to Emily's college friend. He lowered his voice. Man, I heard what went down. That dinner party, people are still talking about it. I raised an eyebrow. What exactly are they saying? He hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. That she humiliated you. That she's been seeing her boss behind your back for months. People don't look at her the same anymore. I felt a grim satisfaction coil in my chest. They shouldn't. Emily tried calling me that night. 11 times. I didn't pick up. She left voicemails, her tone shifting each time, first soft and apologetic, then angry and venomous, then desperate. Michael, this is crazy. Just call me back. We can fix this. Click. You're ruining both our lives. Don't think people will take your side. Click. Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just talk to me, please. Click. I listened to each one in silence, then deleted them. Meanwhile, Richard. He strutted around the office like nothing had happened, or so I heard. A man like him always thought he was untouchable, like rules bent around him. But HR departments don't ignore scandal when it lands in their lap with witnesses and whispers. A week after the dinner, a friend of mine who worked in the same building texted me. Guess who just got called into HR? I didn't even need to ask. Richard's arrogance had always been his strength, but it was also his blind spot. He underestimated how quickly admiration curdled into resentment. All those employees he talked down to, all the women he flirted with under the guise of mentorship, they didn't stay silent when the investigation started. Emily, too, was unraveling. I heard it from her sister first. Sarah called me one evening, her voice hesitant. Michael, I don't know what to say. She told us everything, or at least her version. But Mom's furious with her, and Dad won't even speak to her. You know how he is about loyalty. I stayed quiet. Sarah sighed. I just want you to know, nobody blames you. Not one of us. She burned this bridge herself. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, staring at the ceiling. It felt strange, hearing confirmation of what I already knew, that her world was collapsing. Not because of me, but because of the choices she made. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I saw her again only once in those first weeks. She showed up outside the lawyer's office, waiting for me by the steps. Her eyes were ringed with dark circles, her once perfect hair pulled into a messy knot. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. Michael, she said quickly, stepping into my path. Please, we need to talk. I kept walking. She scrambled to keep up. It's not fair. You're turning everyone against me. My friends won't return my calls. My family, my own family, treats me like I'm diseased. Do you know what that feels like? I stopped then, turning to face her. My voice was calm, flat. Yeah, I do. You made me feel it for months. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her eyes filled, and for a moment she looked like that girl from years ago, the one who promised forever under the stars. But forever had already ended. I stepped around her and walked away. 2 weeks later, Richard's empire cracked. The company released a carefully worded statement about inappropriate conduct by a member of management. Richard wasn't named, but everyone knew. He was put on leave pending investigation. Whispers filled the air, clients pulled back, and the once arrogant boss had to slink out of the office with his reputation in tatters. Emily wasn't spared either. Her name was dragged into the rumors, her credibility shot. The boss's pet, they called her now. The woman who traded respect for attention. And I went to work, paid my bills, kept my head down. People who once only knew me as Emily's husband began to nod at me with something else in their eyes. Not pity, respect. The final nail came when the divorce papers were filed. I watched her signature scrawl across the dotted line in silence. She didn't look up once, her hands trembling as she signed away what was left of us. When it was done, the lawyer slid the papers into a folder, and that was it. Years of marriage condensed into ink and paper. Emily sat there, staring at her hands. I never thought it would end like this, she whispered. I stood, buttoning my jacket. Neither did I. And then I left her sitting in that sterile office, her shoulders slumped, her reputation in ruins. I walked outside into the sunlight, breathing deeply for the first time in months. The storm was finally passing, and though the wreckage was all around me, I was still standing. Emily had destroyed herself. Richard had undone his own empire. And me? I was free. Chapter 9, Transformation. The weeks after the divorce were quiet at first, eerily quiet. No more late-night arguments. No more unanswered questions. No more waiting by the window for a wife who would never come home on time. Silence has a way of amplifying what's inside you. For me, it was rage at first, raw, pulsing, dangerous. But then something shifted. One morning, staring at myself in the mirror, I caught a glimpse of a man I barely recognized. Slouched shoulders, tired eyes, soft around the edges. A man worn down by betrayal. I refused to stay that man. The first step was the gym. It wasn't pretty in the beginning. I walked in with old sneakers, an oversized hoodie, and no plan. Rows of weights clanged, machines whirred, and people moved with confidence I didn't feel. But I forced myself onto a treadmill. Just 20 minutes, I muttered to myself, punching the buttons. 20, then you can leave. By the end of 10, I was drenched in sweat and gasping. But I didn't stop. When I finally stumbled off, my legs trembling, something inside me sparked. A small victory. The next day, I went back. And a day after that. Within weeks, the mirror began to reflect someone different, someone standing taller, stronger. The pain in my chest hadn't vanished, but every drop of sweat, every rep, felt like squeezing poison out of my system. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years started noticing. One evening, my buddy Daniel clapped me on the back after a grueling set of bench presses. "Damn, man, you're starting to look dangerous." I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. "Dangerous?" "Yeah," he smirked. "Like a guy no one should mess with. Like a guy who's been through hell and decided to build a house there instead of running." The word stuck with me. Maybe he was right. But it wasn't just the gym. I picked up my guitar again, its strings dusty from neglect. The first strum was rough, the sound jagged and awkward. But slowly, music returned to my fingertips. Late nights that once were filled with waiting for Emily's text were now spent learning new songs, letting melodies bleed out the hurt. I returned to hiking too. The forest trails I used to love welcomed me back like an old friend. The crunch of leaves beneath my boots, the sharp scent of pine in the air, it reminded me there was a world outside the cage I'd lived in. One Saturday, Daniel and a few others joined me. We trekked until the sun dipped low, sitting around a small fire we built near the ridge. The crackle of flames, the laughter of men who'd known me long before Emily ever did. It was a kind of healing no therapy session could match. "Glad to have you back," Daniel said, handing me a beer. "You were gone too long, man. Lost in someone else's shadow." I took a sip, the bitterness settling on my tongue. Not anymore. Slowly, the rage dulled. I still remembered her words, sharp as daggers. "If I'd met you before my husband, I never would have married him." They replayed sometimes, late at night. But instead of cutting me down, they fueled me. I wasn't the man she dismissed. I was becoming someone stronger. Work became another outlet. I threw myself into projects, stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My boss noticed. "Michael," she said one morning, calling me into her office. "I don't know what changed, but your performance lately, it's impressive. Focused. Driven." I gave a small smile. Let's just say I had a wake-up call. Within months, I was offered a leadership role, something Emily had once scoffed at me for never pursuing. Irony has a wicked sense of timing. And while I rose, Emily fell. I didn't go looking for updates, but they found me anyway. A mutual acquaintance spilled it over coffee one afternoon. "She's not doing well," he said cautiously. "Most of her old friends have cut her off. Word about Richard spread fast. And him? He's on thin ice at the company. HR's still investigating." I stir my cup slowly. "And Emily?" He hesitated. "She's bitter. Drinks too much. Keeps saying none of it was her fault." I nodded, but inside I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge. Just distance. Yet one night, she proved those words true. My phone buzzed past midnight. Against my better judgment, I glanced at it. "Emily, can we talk? Please. I made a mistake. I miss us." I stared at the screen, memories flashing, her laughter on our first date, the promises whispered in the dark, the venom of her betrayal. My thumb hovered. For a moment, I almost typed something back. But then I set the phone down and turned it face down on the nightstand. I wasn't that man anymore. The message remained unread. Days turned into months. My body hardened, my mind sharpened, my spirit slowly healed. The man who once measured his worth by his wife's approval was gone. Now I saw the world with clearer eyes. People could betray you, yes. Love could rot from the inside, yes. But strength, real strength, was born in the ruins. One evening, standing before the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. Broad shoulders, steady gaze, a calm fire in my chest. Daniel whistled when he came over. "Look at you." If she saw you now, I shook my head. She won't. And that's the point. Meanwhile, Emily spiraled further. I heard whispers. Her family still wouldn't forgive her. Friends had long since drifted away. Richard, stripped of his pedestal, avoided her. She was alone now, clinging to the hollow echo of the life she'd torched. I imagined her in that empty apartment, staring at the walls, replaying her choices. Maybe she thought of me sometimes, the husband who had once loved her with every ounce of his being. Maybe she realized too late what she had thrown away. But regrets were hers to carry, not mine. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood at the top of a ridge overlooking the valley, the world spread out in hues of gold and red. The wind was sharp against my skin, my lungs burning from the climb, but I felt alive. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't haunted by what I'd lost. I was proud of what I'd become. Chapter 10, Closure. The city had changed subtly over the months. Autumn had bled into early winter, and the air smelled of smoke from chimneys and wet leaves, a sharp reminder of endings and beginnings. I had my own rhythm now. Mornings at the gym, afternoons at work, evenings strumming the guitar, hiking on weekends. Life moved, as it always did, with or without anyone's approval. It was on one of those brisk mornings, standing outside my favorite coffee shop waiting for Daniel, that I saw her. Emily. She leaned against the brick wall across the street, coat wrapped tight around her thin frame, hands stuffed into her pockets. The sunlight caught in her hair, highlighting the strands of gray that hadn't been there before, and there was a weariness in her eyes that I hadn't seen when we were together, the sharp, biting edge of someone who had hit a wall and realized too late it wasn't going to give way. She spotted me instantly. Her face shifted through a spectrum of emotions. Surprise, nostalgia, fear, and something fragile that seemed almost like hope. "Michael," she called, her voice low, hesitant. The sound carried across the street. She took a cautious step toward me, then stopped, unsure if I would even acknowledge her. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I simply studied her, the small slump of her shoulders, the faint tremor in her hands, the way her eyes darted to the ground before returning to mine. "Can we talk?" she asked, each word deliberate, measured. I nodded slightly, motioning for her to cross. She walked quickly, almost awkwardly, and I noticed how different she seemed without the armor of arrogance or the smug confidence she had worn for years. Now, vulnerability replaced it, raw and unfiltered. She stopped a few feet away, taking a breath that shivered like a leaf in the wind. I know you've moved on. Her voice faltered. I wanted to maybe apologize. Maybe explain. Explain. I repeated, my tone calm, detached. Not cold, not angry. Just steady. After everything, her eyes flickered to the ground again. I know it sounds pathetic. I've been miserable. People hate me. Richard, he's gone. My friend's gone. My family barely speaks to me. I realized I messed up. I really did. And I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "I don't need an apology, Emily. You know why? Because it won't change anything. Nothing you say will undo the choices you made. Nothing you say can repair the trust you shattered." Her lips parted, trembling, as though she wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms. Michael, I was wrong," she whispered, voice cracking. I lost myself. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I did. I wish I could go back," and I shook my head slowly. "You can't go back. That life, that version of us, it's gone. And it's gone because of you, Emily. Not because of me, not because of luck, not because of fate. You chose to destroy it." Her shoulders slumped. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, and she looked smaller somehow, like all the fire she had once wielded had been spent. "Michael, please," she begged, stepping a little closer. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your heart. I just wanted you to know." "You wanted me to know what?" I asked, voice steady but firm. "That you regret it? That you feel sorry? That you're miserable now?" "Yes," she admitted, the words soft, almost inaudible. "I am. I inhaled slowly, letting it fill my lungs before I spoke. Emily, misery is not redemption. Regret is not restitution. You can feel sorry every day of your life, and it still won't bring back the trust you destroyed. It won't fix the years you took for granted. She closed her eyes, shaking her head. I know. I wanted you to hear it from me. I studied her for a long moment. The woman standing before me was not the woman I had married. She had been stripped bare, forced by her own choices into a corner where no amount of charm, arrogance, or manipulation could save her. And yet, somewhere inside, I felt a pang, not of desire, not of love, but of finality. I hear you, I said quietly. I hear your sorrow, your guilt, your fear. But that's all it is. Noise. It changes nothing. I've lived with the consequences of your choices for long enough. Now, it's my turn to live my life. Her mouth opened again, like she wanted to argue, to plead, to twist my words. But I held her gaze. Not with anger, not with hate, just the unshakable calm of someone who had been through fire and come out stronger. You think you can just walk away from me, she said finally, voice tinged with bitterness. And everything you feel now, strength, freedom, happiness, it's going to stay. But you'll see, life has a way of punishing people, Michael. I shook my head, a small, sad smile tugging at my lips. No, Emily, life doesn't punish me. You did, and I survived. I rebuilt. I'm stronger now because of what I endured, and I'm free because I chose to be. Her lips parted, unable to respond. I took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill my lungs, and continued. You taught me the cost of misplaced trust, but you also taught me something else, how to finally live free. The words hung in the air between us, heavier than any apology she could offer, sharper than any defense she might conjure. I turned slowly, letting my coat swirl around me. My steps were deliberate, each one carrying the weight of months of pain, growth, and hard-earned self-respect. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Emily stood frozen, a mixture of regret, shock, and helplessness painted across her face. The traffic noise, the chatter of pedestrians, the distant hum of the city, all of it faded into the background as I walked away, leaving behind not anger, not vengeance, but the unshakable proof that life moves forward, even after betrayal. And for the first time in years, so did I.